The Phoenix Suns have the NBA world on fire, and they didn't even trade a player. Welcome into a breaking news edition of PHNX Suns. Not a live podcast, but still something to help you break down what the Phoenix Suns just did. And that was get a lot more flexibility, which what seems like a very savvy move, depending on how you look at it. Of course, Shams Charania saying that the Suns are trading their coveted, and I mean coveted, 2031 unprotected first-round pick to the Utah Jazz for 3 first-round picks. The Suns are acquiring the least favorable first in 2025 of Cleveland and Minnesota, and 2027 of Cleveland, Minnesota, and Utah, and 2029 of those same 3 teams. So, of course, they're giving up that 2031 pick, that unprotected pick. Danny Ainge and Utah love doing this. They love betting on the future of an NBA franchise that they think is failing and thinking we can get an unprotected first-round pick. We'll leverage some more short-term assets that we might not need currently and bet on in 2031 that Suns first-round pick is going to be high. And I mean high. That's what they're betting on because they're giving up 3 first-round picks in return. Now, obviously, the least favorable of multiple teams does mean that this pick will likely end up in the back end of the rounds, but I don't think that's why the Suns traded for him. I'm sure that's not why you think the Suns traded for them as well. This, first and foremost, has to be something relating to a Jimmy Butler trade. You saw Ira, who is a beat reporter for the Miami Heat, go out and say this is step 1, and step 1 is definitely the step that you have to take in order to get to your final destination. The Suns now have flexibility. According to Keith Smith, who writes for Spot Track, says they now can trade picks in any of the next 6 drafts, something the Phoenix Suns were not able to do beforehand, as long as they space them out according to the Stepien rule. They could only trade the 2031 first before. Now they have more flexibility. They have more options, more assets that they're able to trade. And of course, assets that also teams are looking at more immediate. Not every team is like Danny Ainge. Not every team is like the Utah Jazz, who are looking to bet on the 2030s, right? To bet 5, 10, 6 years down the line, right? Not every team wants that. Teams want assets sooner, including the Phoenix Suns, who want Jimmy Butler, according to reports, immediately. So let's unpack the Jimmy Butler of it all. Now you do have more firsts to either throw to the Miami Heat, if they are the ones who are being stingy and want more value, especially if they're not getting Bradley Beal, to throw it to a 3rd, 4th, or 5th team, depending on if they're taking on Bradley Beal, if they're taking on other contracts that they don't want to add to their payroll, or if they just need a little extra sweetener because they're giving up a prime asset that they're not willing to part with, even if it doesn't come back to the Phoenix Suns, but works to make a 3, 4, 5 team deal happen, right? You are now giving yourself more options, and you have to appreciate the fact that the Suns are doing everything possible to win right now. Could it end up not working out? Could they end up not trading for Jimmy Butler? Sure. But at the end of the day, if you hold on to these picks, you now have added extra first-round picks. If worst case scenario, for those of you who are looking to blow this team up, you want that. You now have additional first-round picks to lead into that or to continue to rebuild if you want to dive headfirst into a rebuild. Now, there are other options like packaging a first-round pick alongside Jusuf Nurkic, a less valuable first-round pick than that 2031 pick, which a lot of people, including myself, were not willing to part with to get rid of Jusuf Nurkic off of this roster. Maybe you part with one of those in a conjunction move with Jimmy Butler to bring in Jimmy and to get off of Nurkic. Or you open it up to trading for other players entirely. If you missed it, the PHNX Suns show, we did an entire trade episode talking about how to get Jimmy Butler and others to the Suns in some pretty insane trades. One of the trades that Gerald Bourguet wrote about over at gophnx.com is one that might play directly into the fact that the Suns needed more picks. That's one that involved the Suns, the Bucks, the Nets, and the Raptors, where the Suns got Brook Lopez and fan favorite Cam Johnson. The Bucks got Bradley Beal and Jakob Poeltl, and the Nets received Bruce Brown, Pat Connaughton, the Suns' 2031 first-round pick, which is now, of course, no longer on the table, and the Raptors received Chris Middleton, Bobby Portis, Zaire Williams, and a first-round pick from the Bucks. Now, our holdup when we talked about this on the show was that the Nets needed more, right? The Nets giving up Cam Johnson would need more than just Bruce Brown, Pat Connaughton, who they would probably try to flip anyway, and a singular first-round pick. Now the Suns could package multiple first-round picks in there and still have another first-round pick, since they traded for 3, to hold on in any auxiliary moves, whether that is Nurkic, whether that is trying to get somebody else, right? There could be a player that previously was not on the table for the Phoenix Suns that could come to light here. And that's kind of the most important about all of this. The most important part is the fact that the Suns just gave themselves more flexibility. Sure, that 2031 first-round pick was absolutely the best asset that they had in their chamber. It was one that many teams salivated over, and it's one that, according to reports, they were pretty hesitant to part with in a Jimmy Butler trade. But now you've given yourself 3 first-round picks. 3 first-round picks that, sure, they're the worst of other teams, but they could still come out there and be valuable. You can still now diversify in your trades, whether it is changing up your direction from Jimmy Butler, which doesn't seem likely right now, but is still on the table. Or if it's sticking with Jimmy Butler and trying to pull in more teams than just 3. Maybe more teams than 4. Maybe you get to a 5-team trade, or you're talking about a team who's taking on Bradley Beal's salary as a rebuilding team, and they might not want to do that. Or there's a 5-team trade that we also talked about on the PHNX Suns podcast, where the Suns get Jimmy Butler and Torrey Craig. The Magic get Bradley Beal and a second-round pick from the Heat. The Heat receive De'Aaron Fox and Trey Lyles. The Bulls receive Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Cole Anthony, Gary Harris, a second-round pick, and a first-round pick. And the Kings get Zach LaVine, a first-round pick from the Heat, and the Suns' 2031 first. Well, if you swap out that Suns' 2031 first, maybe throw in 2 first-round picks to the Kings there, and then you're able to move off of Bradley Beal, get Jimmy Butler and Torrey Craig, and possibly maybe get an asset back in return, since you're now attaching an extra first-round pick. At the end of the day, we don't know what the Suns are going to do, but we know that they're getting themselves in a position to make a move. Whether it's Jimmy Butler, Cam Johnson, whether it's not even a player we've talked about, they are actively moving and shaking to make something happen. And that's kind of the final thing that I want to touch on here. If you want more Suns trade talk, you want more Suns talk in general, of course, check out all of our full-length shows that we have right here on PHNX Sports. But it's the fact that Matt Ishbia, James Jones, Josh Bartelstein, this entire front office, Matt Tellem, they are actively making decisions and changes and moves to be aggressive. As much as you think this Phoenix Suns team is sunk in the water, or you think they have no place to go, it's very clear that they are not throwing their hands up. They're not sitting back and saying it is what it is. We just can't win. We don't have the right team. We spent the money. Boo-hoo. Right? Better luck next time. No, they're going into work every single day and they're saying, how can I make my team the most competitive? How can I get around the Stepien rule, or the Stipien rule, where you weren't allowed to trade multiple first-round picks, where you did handcuff yourself? Maybe if it's not a team building in a trade sense, it's team building in a draft sense. They see that they need to get more picks like Ryan Dunn, Oso Ighodaro, and get them sooner rather than later to put with their big 2 in Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. You give yourself options aggressively by creating those options. And then that leads you to, well, why couldn't they make a Jimmy Butler trade work? Matt Ishbia came in and pushed the button on the Kevin Durant trade, right? Even if it wasn't him directly, him taking over was right before trading. You can do the math. Traded for Bradley Beal is clearly in aggressive win now mode and made a promise to Phoenix Suns fans. And that promise was that he will do everything in his power to compete and to win. And that's exactly what this trade was. Trading your 2031 first-round pick unprotected to the Utah Jazz, which does come with some risk, but also comes with some reward as well, as you get 3 other picks in the first round coming back to you, the worst, of course, between a couple of teams, but first-round picks nonetheless. Drop a comment down below. What do you think about this move? What do you think is happening next? Of course, subscribe to PHNX Sports, turn those notifications on, and let us know what you think is happening. And, of course, when something does happen, we'll be right here with you. Subscribe to PHNX, hit that notifications bell, follow us on social media at PHNX_Suns, and we'll talk to you when another trade happens.
We all silly like the mayor.